Wilma?
Hi, Zoe.
Hello. I was wondering, can you tell us about that picture there?
Charlie's Angels, we
Charlie's
always used to
Angels.
call it. Yes. Well, it was from that kind of era. I think it was mid-80s. I'm not exactly sure, but I wish I still had that outfit, but I don't know what happened to it. Or I don't know what happened to that hair either. But anyway, that was the Lydian Quartet, I suppose my first, real quartet. Started in Boston, and I played in it for 7 years, and it still exists.
Wow.
All those years later, we started in 1980. And actually, I probably looked exactly like that when I met Liz for the first time, or at least when we were in the same place for the first time. I don't know if how much meeting there was that went on, but we were both at the Portsmouth competition in 1985. Would have been around the time that photo was taken.
And what about this one?
Well, that one was a going away present from the NZSO, and it was done by a friend of mine, who was also a violinist actually, of the quartet that I was in at the time. The other violinist in that picture, although we have no faces, is the current concertmaster, Vesa, and the other two are still in the orchestra too, Rowan and Andrew. Yeah, so that was an actual group.
So quartets, this has sort of been an ongoing thread.
Yes,
In
that's
your
exactly
life.
right. I played in my first one when I was 13 at secondary school.
Can you remember what you played?
No, actually, can I? No. I was the baby of the group. The other three were, older. Two probably still in secondary school, and the other one probably older still. And it was just a, casual thing that we did for fun. That was my first, but I still vaguely remember being in it. So New Zealand has a secondary schools chamber music competition.
And were you in that?
I was in that in its early years. It's now 60 years old, that competition.
Wow.
But I was, in one of the early years, possibly not the first, but close to it, and that was with a quartet. So yes, we would have been having lessons, but I actually can't remember who with now. It's, so historic.
Isn't it so funny to think that, music essentially is not a competition. The essence of music is not a competition. But isn't it interesting how when you've got something like that kind of forces critical thinking.
Yeah.
Actually, can you remember what that was like when you were younger?
Yeah, and it's very motivating for kids, any kind of competition. That's why sports are, so big. Kids love competing. And actually, it's not so much about the winning even. It's sort of the whole, the excitement of doing it. And yeah, I do remember that, and it was certainly motivating. We didn't win, but we did get to go to the finals, which was a big deal because that was travelling to another city, and the excitement of that too.
Because actually, the promise of a competition, actually, I remember from our early days that it would force you. It would force you to kind of go beyond that comfort.
Yes, absolutely.
Comfort zone.
That's why I think they're still a good thing, even though, of course, it is weird, the concept of competing in music, and it's so subjective what anybody thinks about who should have won, and the audience has just as much right to that opinion as the judges in competitions. But yeah, I think that it's very motivating and really makes you work. Just that. It focuses your work, actually, just gives it a kind of, short-term, high-impact kind of direction. And, I think you do some really good work because you have to get through, what it takes, especially in a, professional level competition where the repertoire demands are huge and the quantity of repertoire too. So, yeah, it's great. I wouldn't say I enjoyed them, but I look back on them very fondly because they were great pivotal sort of moments in the development of a group. After the Lydian Quartet, I went to New Zealand and started the New Zealand String Quartet, but we were then, older and kind of not quite in that zone.
Must have been fascinating starting a quartet as for professionals. Did you approach it differently to starting a quartet? Sort of in a student sense. you know, when you're a student, you kind of think, well, we'll start with Haydn and early Beethoven, or did you just leap straight in there?
You're talking about a Lydian?
Oh, no, the New
New Zealand.
New Zealand String Quartet, yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting because we were 4 very different people from different backgrounds. 3 of us were Kiwis and coming together and knew each other as kids actually, but, you know, hadn't been together for some time by then. I think it was interesting we still had a development sort of phase, obviously. We didn't launch into our first concert for maybe 6 months.
Wow.
So we did some house concerts and things like that, but our first public concert was probably after about 6 months.
Can you remember what you played in your first public concert? Was it...
Oh, that's a toughie. It's funny, I definitely remember the program for the Lydian Quartet's first concert, even though that was earlier.
What was the Lydian Quartet?
That was Beethoven Opus 18, number 3, Bartók 3. Oh God, was it Debussy in that one? I think it was, actually. I thought my memory was better than it is, obviously. Certainly Bartók 3 and 18, number 3, and I think Debussy as well. And that was given to us by we worked with a coach for the first couple of years of that group, Robert Koff, original second violinist of the Juilliard Quartet, and a hilarious man. Still miss him. And he prescribed that program for us and gave us 2 weeks to learn it, and then we did our first concert. So that was a very different sort of beginning, actually. Yeah. That was just jumping in at the deep end.
And did he tell you why he chose those pieces, or was it sort of self-evident?
It was a great program.
Yeah.
It was self-evident, you know, that it really challenged us. It was an amazing range of stuff to work on.
Can I tell you a fun fact?
Brilliant.
Bartók 3 and Opus 18 number 3 were 2 of Flinders' first.
Oh, really? Wow.
Pieces.
There you go.
There you go. And you talk about Beethoven 135 being
that was also one that we played in 3 out of the 4 competitions that we did. And,
can you put your finger on what makes a good competition piece?
Yes, I think that it needs to show a range. It's, you know, show what you can do, a range of musicianship and, you know, thinking and decision making, and, you know, apart from the obvious things like technical skills as a group, you know, in tune and time, ability to play together, etc., a range of colours and all that. I think the repertoire does have an impact on the judges, and I think it's an important thing and in fact it's part of why most competitions give the groups quite a lot of free choice with repertoire, because it matters actually.
It is a skill in itself, isn't it?
Yeah,
being able to choose repertoire.
Yeah.
And actually currently being in the throes of choosing repertoire, you know, sort of for the future, it can take a long time to come on the right mix. So in terms of musical thinking, do you have mentors whom you sort of hear talking over your shoulder? Do you hear their advice still? Yes,
absolutely. Absolutely all the time. My main mentor in Boston during my student years and beyond was Louis Krasner, who, you know, I will forever have a soft spot in my heart. He looked like Yoda from Star Wars, and that was kind of cool too, because the Star Wars movies came out at the time that, you know, I was working with him. I thought, my God, did Spielberg know him? You know? And he also was the kind of wise old man, the character as well. So he was fantastic, and I had spent 6 months, or it was a year, working intensively with a student group with him at the New England Conservatory before the Lydian Quartet. In fact, the violist was part of that group too, and we worked very intensively on a small number of pieces, which was a great experience, because of course we don't have time to do that now. You know, life is different in the professional world, but then we had months to work on Beethoven Opus 59 number 1, and that experience, you know, I'll never forget. And everything he said about it, I still apply a lot of what he said to my own thinking, especially in the classical rep about phrase structure. And, you know, we often talk about the length of the phrase, or this is an extra bar, or, you know, I think just it's not a 4-bar phrase, there's a couple of bars added on at the end. That was all from him, all that sort of thinking about structure, and not just for the academic point all on its own, but because of what it does to how you play the phrase, it makes, sense of what's on the page, makes you able to understand it and therefore impart it better to the audience. So yeah, I hear his voice in my head all the time. Robert Koff too, same thing, because I think those early intensive experiences stick with you for a long time. And it is, most people remember that stage of life quite vividly because of its intensity and, discovery and all of that. I was so lucky with going to America. I'm glad I made that choice because there were so many, amazing people to study with, so many that I studied with on a more casual basis or, not as intensively as the quartet coaches, but still with, incredible knowledge and tradition and history, most of them immigrants from Europe and who ended up in America. Most of the ones I'm thinking of were already, old men by the time I met them. Hardly any old women, actually, interestingly.
Well,
Dorothy DeLay was my violin teacher, yes. Well, she was incredible, but I was just thinking of the chamber music coaches I had were actually all men.
Isn't that interesting? And then you, because Lydian
Quartet was all women.
Quartet was all women, and now you find yourself in another quartet.
I know. Well, it is cool to come back full circle to the all-women quartet because the Lydian Quartet was the second in America, the all-women quartet, and it was news back then.
Wow.
That was like a newsworthy thing, that to have 4 women in a group. Of course, now we hardly think about it.
You talked about having your early chamber music experiences in the chamber music competition in New Zealand, and now you've set up Strike a Chord.
That's right. Well, I have been part of that whole beginning with Musica Viva of that competition, and it's been really exciting, and it was inspired by the New Zealand competition, absolutely. And my experience of it personally, and also just how I've seen that competition develop for the 60 years of its existence. I think that Strike a Chord has the same potential to develop and evolve and do amazing things for young musicians in Australia. It already is evolving, which we have a sort of 10-year plan with that competition. And it's great to see kids motivated by that, the same way I was. And just the excitement around, and the coaching program. So we have an affiliated coaching program where we have, a roster of musicians that go around the country and offer that service to groups, some of whose teachers may feel a bit isolated and welcome the kind of extra input for their students. And this year that just exploded to, I think we were hoping for something like, 50 groups if we were lucky, and we got something like 78 in the end applying.
So the other part of, I guess, your musical experience has been being a concertmaster. And I remember you saying on a number of occasions just actually how beneficial it was having had that string quartet training.
Absolutely.
Walking into a concertmaster job. Why? How is that so beneficial?
Yes, I still think that, I just think it's the most important part of any string player's education is being in a quartet. Everybody should do it, must do it. It's, your education is lacking if you haven't done it as a string player. So I do think so, and the reasons being that all the skills that we need to play in a quartet are exactly what you need to do anything else in music. So, anything else is a subset of what you need to do in a quartet, it seems to me. And the orchestra situation, the concertmaster situation, you need to lead, obviously, that's your job, but you also need to listen to everything around you. You need to communicate carefully and, intelligently with your colleagues to be effective. Just everything to do with it. I know that an orchestra seems like a big kind of amorphous thing, and the conductor's the boss, which is true. But within that, in the best orchestras, there's chamber music, the essence of chamber music happening all through the orchestra. Everybody has to listen to everybody else, and you're playing with the person right next to you, you're playing with your section, you're playing with the second clarinet or the bass trombone or whatever. So it's very similar on a different scale. I know people were kind of shocked when I got the NZSO job with New Zealand, concertmaster job, because that was my first concertmaster job. I thought, well, she hasn't played an orchestra, she's just been in a quartet, for God's sake. But, it absolutely is the best training for being a concertmaster, and it's amazing how many concertmasters have been quartet players previously.
Does it work vice versa? Does it work, does any elements of being a concertmaster, can they translate back to string quartet, or is it...
It's not such a natural, or an obvious kind of progression, I don't think. But because I think in a quartet is where you can hone those skills best, seems to me, in the most intense, most productive, most sort of concentrated version of them. And then you're ready to go and do anything, it's a soloist. You quite often do a lot of chamber music these days, and makes them better soloists.
And there is, there's something about the added musical input from colleagues, which which sort of just enhances your musical perception and your musical vision, which is something that I'm always admiring of you, Wilma, is that you just seem to be constantly still gathering information and sort of still formulating ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even, sort of halfway through a tour of concerts, we'll be sitting in the sound check, and you're hang on, but I was just thinking about this little phrase, and it's never set and forget with you. There's this constant thinking and evolution, and even after the last concert, you always say, if only you had another one. Has that always been the case for you?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it is for all of us too. I mean, I don't think it's just me. I think that if that's what our working process is. We're always searching to make more sense of things and improve things, and have a better concert. And if we're not doing that, then we probably wouldn't actually enjoy what we're doing as much.
And isn't that one of the most, it's an obvious thing to say about music as well, is that it's an art form that's not static.
Yeah,
it's
that's
not,
right.
It's not complete. Every single time you play it, we have the opportunity of adding another layer.
Yeah, and there's nothing as satisfying as coming back to a piece that you know really well and reworking it. It's great, and there's no shortage of new things to discover every time.
That is a sign of a great piece, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of repertoire, you've spent so many years in string quartets, but there's a vast repertoire of pieces that you haven't yet played.
That's right.
Can you name a few pieces that have been on your bucket list?
Yeah, well, I still haven't played all the Beethovens. That's like a big hole for me. That's like, my God, how has that not happened yet? So I'm glad that we do them, even though some of them are repeats. Some of them are not. Some of them are for the first time. So that's great. There are these iconic pieces in the repertoire that every string player or quartet player at least would think, I have to tick that box. Let me think. Oh, it's so much. I mean, you're right. The wealth of repertoire available to us is why it's so great to be in a quartet, and also it's the brilliance of the medium itself is why composers wrote so much for this group. Something about that combination is spectacularly successful. And every composer knows it. And so, that's why we have such amazing music available to us. So, it's exciting to never run out. You feel sorry for those other groups that kind of, don't have that wealth of repertoire. And, once you've done all the great ones, you think, you have to wait for somebody to write another one, We have such a wealth of and of course, people are still writing quartets all the time, but even the historic canon is, it's unfathomable how much there is.
Well, mate, it's been so awesome talking to you.
Thanks, Zoe.
We'll book another chat in.